by the way, I'm an entrepreneur by accident. When I started, I wasn't thinking of, because many entrepreneurs would say, I've been thinking about that when I was little. I wasn't. For me, I became an entrepreneur by necessity because I realized a problem. I wanted to be part of the solution. I couldn't find a way to break into the industry and say, oh, if nobody's giving me a seat, let me just make up my seat. So that's actually how it started.
Hello, this is Mo, and you're listening to the Good for Profit podcast. Today's guest with us is Tony Tiyou, founder and CEO of Renewables in Africa. The work that they do is incredible, and we have such an amazing conversation ahead of us, so let's get right into it. Hello, Tony. Welcome to the podcast. Very happy to have you with us here today.
Hello, Mo. It's a pleasure to talk to you because I'm sure it's going to be a lot of interesting topics that we're going to cover.
Absolutely. So, I've already provided a sort of a brief background on what you do prior to starting the podcast, but if you could maybe tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with renewables in Africa, that would be incredible for the listeners as well.
Oh, definitely. So, but first of all, before telling you what I'm doing, so I can give you a little bit of a background, so how I came in to do what I'm doing. And in fact, I take you back into 2008. I was attending a conference called the Electrification of Africa. And it was a brilliant conference and speaker were amazing. But there's just one picture that completely changed the rest of my career, but also my life. This was the power distribution across the globe and in the continent. And I could see there was one continent that was particularly dark, and that was the continent of Africa. And it really, really shocked me at the time because having grown up in Cameroon, in Africa, I didn't realize how serious the situation was. Maybe because I was accustomed to that. But the beauty of travel is that as you travel, you go to different places. You become confronted to a different set of realities. You start realizing, okay, I'm sure we can do better. And from that standpoint, that image really sort of did something into me. It was almost like an electroshock, right? So I decided, okay, I wanted to first of all understand and also see what I can do to be part of a solution. I'm giving you obviously the shorter version of why we could be here for 2 hours.
No,
And
of course. You must have thought about this for a very long time. So
yeah, exactly, yeah, because you can't just jump and go into something. People will say, "Are you mad?" Especially thinking about that. So I was an automotive engineer working in automotive, right? And I would say I had a career that
Okay.
was correct, good. I wasn't even thinking about entrepreneurship at the time. So when I decided to go into renewables, obviously I couldn't find. First, what I can say, I wanted to be part of the solution, and that means we needed more power, and we still need more power into the continent. Now, there's two choices, just to make it simple. Either we go for fossil fuel, which is a traditional way, still a traditional way now, or we look for, let's say, better sources we believe provide better future for all of us, including our children's. So obviously, it was a no-brainer for me to decide to go the renewable way. Or once you realize it, you start now figuring out, so how do I get into this industry? So I was an engineer and I'm still an engineer, and I was told you have transferable skills. People are going to hire you. I approached a lot of people into the sector. It didn't happen this way. Yeah, it was a really. So I had
is that the sweet story they sell you?
yeah, exactly. That's actually what you see into the books, right? So now when it comes to reality,
Yeah.
and also what makes it difficult, challenging, at the time, we were in 2008, and I know we progressively, hopefully, coming out of the pandemic. But if you remember, 2008, that was another big financial crisis, right?
Crash.
That we went through. So people were getting rid of employees, not recruiting them. It was making it a lot of more difficult. So I had to create my own way to get into the sector. First, working for other people, and then later on creating my company and working to that. And that's how I came up with Renewables in Africa. And as I created Renewables in Africa, like any new company and more, you'll be very, very used to that and understand it. You go through different set of iteration, right? So you're looking at different business model that will make sense for you. And we've gone through that journey, and I'm sure we're still going through that. But ultimately, what we've arrived at, which seems to work well for us now, we have two mandates. One of them is to be a digital media platform, raising awareness about renewables, energy, and clean energy across Africa and the globe. Yeah, and we do that through a set of activities like webinars, articles, newsletters, podcasts, and so on and so forth. And the second mandate, it's to be a project developer, setting up projects as well and developing that, but more from the CNI space to commercial industrial. In a nutshell, working more with businesses. An example could be a business having issue with higher energy costs, but also power outages. What are we doing? Providing fully funded solar solution. So that's what we are now. And I simplified and saying that we preach and we're doing. So that's what we are renewables in Africa.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, and I've definitely seen the picture. It's quite a stark image that you have on the website, where you have the two pictures of that. I don't know when they were taken by NASA, but they're basically of the Earth at night, right? And at nighttime, the whole of Earth, there's a lot of lights everywhere, but Africa is pretty dark. And I remember seeing that on the website and thinking, yeah, that's a pretty strong mission to have, and a pretty valuable one as well for society. It's actually pretty incredible. So, I mean, I'd imagine you're facing a lot of challenges and there's a lot of obstacles that you're going through. And I'll be very happy if we can unpack some of those as we go along as well. But I'm curious. So, you're saying that you want to preach and also do, right? Which is the perfect mix of having both at the same time. What would you say if you could kind of break those down into sort of like key goals or targets that you have for the next decade, let's say, for Africa as a continent, for electrifying it? What would be your kind of goals that you're looking forward to in the next decade or so?
Cool. Yeah, well, it's, as you say, clearly, everything started with this story. So if people understand that background story, they understand what we onto. Because obviously, it started with me, the founder of the company, also transferred out to people that are working with me. So clearly, we have a clear vision for us, right? Well, besides being recognized as a Africa clean energy champion, what we really want is to turn Africa into a fully electrified continent by 2040, not 2030 like the SDG is saying. Not because we criticize the SDGs. It's just like I say, being an engineer, I'm also pragmatic, right?
And
exactly.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, just for the listener's sake, the HDD is the...
Yeah, the SDGs.
The Human Development Goals.
Yeah. Sustainable Development Goals,
okay,
SDGs,
brilliant.
SDGs, yes. That's
Sure.
That's what it is. Because normally the SDGs, the 17 goals is to be reached by 2030.
Yep.
But with just 8 years to go, we can understand that obviously it's not gonna happen right now, right? It's not gonna happen to be fully electrified for the continent of Africa. But we believe it's still possible to do it by 2040. So that's why our vision is to turn the continent into fully electrified by 2040. It doesn't mean we're gonna do that on our own now, but we need to be one of the players sort of making it happen together with many other people that are doing it. This is our vision. And the mission that we have, it's what we call is to bring back power into Africa. Just as simple as that. We want to bring back power into the continent. And this is actually what is really driving us as a company. Yeah.
And the key thing you mentioned there earlier as well is about renewables, right? Because you could technically bring power into Africa with fossil fuels, but you don't want to do that, right? You want to champion the renewable side of things or technologies that are not so harmful to the environment.
Yeah, exactly. Because we all living into this home that we all share, right? So we need to be mindful of what is the best way, the sustainable way for us to move forward, right? Especially as we're coming off of a pandemic. We all could see, I don't know if some people may not be aware, there is some studies that demonstrated that, the more polluted the atmosphere is, obviously, the more unhealthy it is also for everybody. Yes, we want to reach a fully electrified status for Africa, but you want to do that in a sustainable way, because like I say, I always take this quick example and say, what's the whole point of having electricity for everybody and everybody's sick?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
It doesn't make sense. You want to do that responsibly, and I strongly believe into climate change, and I believe the large majority of the world now believe into it just because we are seeing the consequences. So we need to make sure that we can reach this objective while preserving our common home.
So that must be very challenging for you, because I'd imagine there are so many obstacles and so many challenges on the way that you need to overcome to actually help electrify the continent, but not only electrify it, but electrify it renewably. So what are some of the challenges that you're facing or that you have faced in the past that, are kind of things that you need to work around or things that you're trying to work around? And I've seen that, for example, that you do such a good job with renewables in Africa, partnering up with a lot of different people. You have a huge amount of partners as an organization, which is absolutely brilliant. And I sense that sort of that's all part of the effort in having a lot of people involved and a lot of different organizations involved to solve these obstacles, because there's so many of them and they're going to be quite large. Would you say that there are some obstacles at the moment that you're facing with trying to fulfill that mission that are particularly tough to overcome, or where, for example, there could be more support from international organizations, or are there areas where there could be more support, even maybe from startups? So imagine that there's an entrepreneur out there somewhere who's thinking of starting a business around something to do with climate change, and they have the sort of same alignment as you. They want to help bring renewable energy to Africa. Are there obstacles that you'd say these people should try and focus on, and is there a way that they can work with you to help overcome those?
I just wanted to say, when I started the business, like I say, there were obstacle challenges everywhere, and pretty much on a daily basis, I have to be honest with people. And I wanted to say that, when you look at the model from business school and also from MBA that you're taking, usually they will say you start small in a controlled environment, you make your mistakes there, and where you actually are good and good to grow, you're not going to grow and expand. Yeah. So that's usually what you've been told. So it was clearly different in reality for me, right? So not that I
What do they say
disregard
that
those.
every plan? What's the
Yeah,
saying again? That every plan fails once it meets once it meets battle, or once it goes into battle, or something like that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what happened to me. So I started in Botswana. Why Botswana? Because simply one of my best friends is from Botswana. He built up a business there, was very successful, and is a kind of my mentor, right? Although we are the same age, but he's ahead of me. And I started there, and it's a small country in terms of population, not size, and relatively well-run country compared to some others in the continent. I thought that was a good environment to start, right? And also the economic equation there, it's a lot more favorable than other places as well. That could be a little bit more challenging. So that's where I started. Yeah, but very quickly I hit reality, which is the fact that I still couldn't get enough pipeline traction from pipeline, and thing was still very slow. Because if you say that you make it a business, you need to have the revenue to be able to sustain the business yourself and people you're working with, right? So very quickly, if you don't have that revenue coming in, you have a problem. So basically, I understood very, very quickly that obviously I haven't run through that for a few months, a couple 6 months or something like that. You understand that okay, you clearly can't take off like that. I was very much forced quickly to expand at that stage. What I mean by expand is look at multiple countries at the same time, which you will not hear. You
Right.
will not hear from
An MBA
the
class, of
yes,
course.
you won't hear that. So you have to stop, and also because by you tapping multiple countries, that's where you're not banking of countries not evolving necessarily at the same speed, right? And that's one thing that we had to do. And the other thing is, when you're setting up a business, you're starting because I started was mainly I wasn't traveling that much like I would do now. I was pretty much in the UK relying on people on the ground, just making some few travel here and there. So it becomes challenging. How do you engage with people? And also, when I started back in the days, technology wasn't as trendy as not technology. Renewable energy wasn't as trendy as it is right now. We started talking about that, but the understanding of renewable was still very 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 challenging. And this is where I thought, okay, I need a way to be present on the continent without being there necessarily. I need a way to talk to many people without having to go door to door necessarily all the time. That's why I started. Hey, what about if we create a blog? And obviously, and I can see that people don't have a good understanding of renewables energy. I start sharing some insight. That's how I started, and the reception actually was actually very good. and it became what we have right now, and where we evolve it into a full-blown media platform. But it's me solving those challenges. I'm just taking those two examples because obviously there's many. Like I say, I'm facing challenges on a daily basis, literally on a daily basis. So, but what I'm simply highlighting in here is actually is, and that's the way for me. See, I've learned to look at problem in life. In fact, problem are here to get you to to grow. They're here to help you to grow, because when the problem comes to your face and you can solve it, you grow. And next time you find it, it's not a problem anymore because you have already the solution. And in fact, if we never had problem, we never would have been in a position to see ourselves, moving into bigger heights. That's what I would
No,
say.
absolutely. I don't know if you've heard, so we have no association with this whatsoever, but I don't know if you've heard of the book The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. It's exactly, yeah, it's exactly that. And yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, anyone starting a business, it's not going to be an easy journey. It's always going to be a tough journey, and there's always going to be a lot of learning to do and a lot of challenges that we come across. I suppose one of those challenges with renewable energies specifically, something that I keep hearing back from people that are, so everyone understands that climate change is happening. Everyone understands that we need to have better renewable resources. We need to get rid of fossil fuels as a main source of energy. We need to do all those things. But one thing that keeps coming back again from people is around the whole reliability and the storage of energy that's being produced by renewables. And I'm quite curious because one of the things that you actually help with is around sort of load shedding, right? Is around interruption of energy. And you actually use renewables to try and offset that, right? Which seems to me as the opposite of what some people say is the problem. So I'm just curious, how do you see a challenge there with renewable energies in terms of reliability and storage? And are there ways that can be solved?
Yeah.
As from experiment.
Yeah, I think storage is one of the holy grails, right? People say it's the holy grails. I would say one of them. Yeah, because it depends. Because renewables energy, it's important to understand for people that don't always realize it, is you have multiple sources. Yeah, in that are considered renewables, right? And even recently, the EU decided to include gas. Yeah, so I'm not gonna. It's not a criticism. I'm just saying that it's happening. But that's a tangent.
Do
But
you want to go
wait,
into that?
sorry.
Sure. Do you want to go into that?
Maybe not now. but
I
what I
know, I
want
know.
to say is actually, but the two mature technologies are, in fact, the three we have to say. But the newer one are solar and wind. The older one is hydro that we don't talk too much about. It's just like hydro uses a lot of fossil fuel, but still renewables anyway, a source of energy. Solar and wind are both intermittent. And we know that to grow that, we need storage. That's why a lot of people are talking about that. Yes, it's fair as well, because we also need to be honest. Because I also don't want to give the false impression that renewables solve all the problem. No, it's a journey. We're still on the journey, right? So there's still lots of questions that needs to be solved. But clearly, we obviously making a step forward. Yes, there are solutions that are around to tackle the intermittency part of the part of the equation. It comes obviously at a significant investment for some, and depending on the type of application that you have, it may or may not it may or may not make sense. And the funny thing is actually, even before I jump into this conversation with you, one of the conversation I had earlier on this morning with one of the potential clients that hopefully we're going to be able to work together was to look at this aspect, whereby this is a company in eastern part of Africa. So they're setting up a system that's going to work on solar, and they need some backup power. And at the moment, we're discussing with them whether that backup power needs to be diesel or storage. Ideally, they want storage. Storage come at a cost. They're not necessarily willing to obviously absorb all that cost. Then they're having to come up with a kind of a compromise. Those are what I call practical solution on the day-to-day basis that we need to look at. That's why I'm saying it's a journey. At time, you're able to completely offset the fossil fuel. with a purely 100% fully 100% renewable energy solution. At times you have to compose with that. It will be diesel gen here, but the benefit here is that it's a lot more reduced as opposed to just going for a full blown diesel gen. So you go for a smaller one, downsize it, and other part it could be gas and so on and so forth. But I'm pretty much sure as we're moving ahead, there will be a lot more solution whereby we can have a full 100% renewable energy solution. Because people always say, yeah, there's no solution right now. Yeah, but there's no solution today. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be a solution tomorrow. That's the thing. It's important for me for people to realize that we should be ambitious and take a commitment. The commitment for us, for me, will drive the innovation, not just looking at challenges and saying that because of the challenges we can't innovate. And that's what we tend sometimes to do.
Yeah, and actually, as a matter of fact, the challenge is the opportunity to go and innovate, right? I mean, if there is no challenge, then you don't necessarily you can innovate, but you may not be solving a real problem. But if there is a challenge, that's a good challenge to take on, so to speak, and actually try and solve it. Do you see nuclear playing into the equation at all in Africa?
This is one of the tough and difficult conversation that one need to have. So nuclear is already playing a part in South Africa because there's one nuclear power station in around Cape Town, the only one as well in the continent. I know many other countries, 2 or 3 countries, are clearly thinking about going nuclear as well. So let's see what is going to happen.
In Africa? 2, 3 countries in Africa,
Yeah,
you mean?
I know, yeah. There's definitely
Okay,
a few
interesting.
countries that are looking,
Wow.
looking into nuclear. So personally, I'm taking nothing off the table at this stage with regard to nuclear or fossil fuel and natural gas. But what I'm actually saying, this is where the opportunity is. If we're looking at the power generation for Africa, a good 75% for the last 10 years has still been heavily tilted towards fossil fuel, right? So that's absolutely a good 75%. In fact, renewables energy is still very tiny. We don't actually realize it's still very tiny. I don't think
Wow.
it's more than 4%.
You'd think with all that sunshine,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
there'll be more renewables involved.
Yeah. So personally,
Yeah.
I think first of all, before even thinking going 100%, which gonna take some time, let's also face it. Let's face it. What I'm saying is we can already have a lot more renewable into the mix. Clearly, there's already a good opportunity there. But at the same time, we need to provide power to people right now. So it could happen that, and Africa is a big place, 1.3 billion people, right? It would be a little bit silly and considerate just to take some solution off the list completely. No, but what I'm saying here is, yes, there are going to be places where we need potentially a couple of nuclear power here and there. But for me, it's clearly the idea needs to be shifting more towards renewables, right? If we talk about providing power right now, yeah, you probably need to have a little bit of nuclear here and there, a little bit of fossil fuel here and there. But what I'm saying, there is a lot more already that could be done for renewables. And as we are planning, because any station that we're building, they're going to be here for 20, 30 years, is how do we make sure that when it comes to renew those fossil fuel or power plant, those nuclear power plant, we are in a position to go 100% renewables, for example. Yeah. So that's the way. That's what I'm saying. A proper conversation needs to be had, basically. Instead of having just ideology fighting against one another and not be able to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm a
absolutely.
very strong pro renewable energy source, but I'm very open to competition. Just sit down. Like I said, that's why I'm an engineer. We sit down, we look at a solution, we look at
Exactly.
what is working. But clearly,
Practically.
what I can say, even already going from where it is right now, which is 3 to 4%, up to 20% of renewable, is already going to be for me a massive shift. But that would take already some time.
No, of course. Yeah, of course. And actually, in terms of time, is it because there need to be more feasibility studies or just more investment? Or, if you could imagine that there was a silver bullet out there that would help fast track the adoption of renewables in Africa, what do you think that would be?
For me, the silver bullet, I would go against what many people tend to say, it would be the population.
Population?
Obviously, we need money.
Wow, okay.
We need innovation.
Yeah.
We need regulation, but for me, with the population. I'll tell you what, very quickly. Many things happen in the sector because of the regulation, right? The regulation that comes in place that attract investment, that make things happen, right? The regulation, we're talking about the politician, they are the one making the, whether we like it or not, making the law, especially in the power sector, that actually make things happen. Those politicians rely on the population to get elected for them to be in power. And even in regime that people can challenge and not quote unquote undemocratic. I don't want to dive into that. Obviously, there are different
Sure, sure.
systems.
No, but this is
Whatever
not
the
this is not a
system,
political chat.
yeah,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah, yeah.
system, yeah. Let's imagine even if a single party, that single party still has members. If their own members are saying, "Whoa, this is what we want," even to please them, so that when they walk in the street, they're gonna clap behind this guy. So he will want to know what is that they want. And I'm saying that civil body, for me, I still believe we're not talking enough about the awareness around the population to get them, to mobilize them to move this guy. But this guy, they're driven by lobbies, by big interests, right? But what I'm saying, so it's sometimes difficult to shift them. But what I'm saying, if the whole population, like one man, sort of get the message clear, this is where they're going. This guy, just because he wants to be elected, or let's say, it could be a man or woman, because he want to be elected, will look at how can I please that person, yeah, and that's how he will put in place the policy that are needed. And investment, if the right policy are in place, they will come there, because out there people want to invest into renewable these days. People want to invest into renewable. It's just that one of the issues is they don't find credible, bankable project, as they call it, where they can do it, or stable government that they can do it. So my silver bullet, I go against what many people would say. Very important what everybody say, and I agree with that. But I say I will tap a lot into the population. I give you again another example. I've always mentioned that to people. I've been saying that for the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? So Africa, to convince people, you need to tap into what we call the emotion, right? So Africa, we are very different, but we have vectors that are common to us. We like our music, we like our food, we like our culture, we like football. Look at a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't know, 20 million people followers behind him. Samuel Eto'o, I don't know, 30 million. Only one tweet of this guy saying, "Hey, I'm going solar in my house." I promise you, it's gonna be able to achieve what a guy like me would take, 10 years to do one part. And this is what I'm talking about. This is actually how you can really, really drive drive change. I know I've been saying that a long time, but people see that just as gimmicks. Or you're gonna.
That's actually a really good point, though.
Yeah, that is. People love. If you look at the last Afghan we had in Africa, it's one of the. It was one of the most broadcasted events that happened Afghan history. To date. But I'm saying if you use that platform,
Senegal, and
yeah. So if you use this platform to pass on the message, that's what you tap into. I'm not just saying that. Same thing. People like Nollywood, which is Nigerian film industry, now expanding to Africa. You get all these guys to start to relay the message that you can start influencing people. So same thing with music. And you get the population behind the message, and I promise you, you will see these guys starting to shift.
That's actually brilliant, and I guess that ties in really well with what you're doing in terms of the media side of things, right? In terms of the preaching part. So the question then becomes about how to engage more and more of those people with what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sometimes struggling to ask, for a joke's sake, tell me who's the most powerful guy, for example, one of the most powerful guy in the world who controls three of the biggest country in the world. And people will look around and say, well, think about the guy who owns, the Suns, Sky News and so on and so forth, Mr. Murdoch. He controls the US, the UK, and Australia. For every election, they pretty much know how to influence what's going to be the talking point of the election. Just by the power of their media. This is what I'm talking about here. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that we need to be aware of what is really. Look at that. Okay, again, I'm not stepping into politics. I don't want to exploit that. I'm just going to say look at the news. There's only one specific news that we seem to talk about, which is obviously very, very sad, which is the Ukraine Russia crisis. Again, I don't want to talk. I'm not going to tap into the politics. It's very, very sad thing, and we're all very sad for what's happening to the people there. Let's be honest about it. Yeah, nobody dispute that. But I'm saying as well. But this is what is dominating the news at the moment. Whether you want to follow that or not, that's what you're absorbing. It shows you the power of communicating, and that's how you move people towards one direction or the other. So, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and we need to exploit that if we want to make climate change a centerpiece. We need to use that properly to mobilize people.
That's absolutely brilliant. And we're on that journey right now with you. So I'm assuming that first of all, if people want to find some really good information around what's happening in Africa within the renewable sector, within the renewable seed in general, they can head over to Renewables in Africa and look for stuff there and read your blogs and get up to date, right? But also, if also I wanted to ask if there's someone out there who wants to help you on that mission. And sort of help you spread the word and become an even bigger and stronger media company. How can they get in touch with you, or how can they sort of find out more about what you do and get involved?
Well, it's we obviously present in all the different media handles, media platform, so they can reach out to us there. Whether we talk about Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is probably the preferred one if people want to reach out personally to me, Tony Tiyou, and then and that's what they can do. Later on, what I'm gonna do as well to make sure that you have it as one of the link people can look at for businesses out there who are looking, for example, to become more or to start a sustainability journey. So I've put together like a free and quick guide about 9 steps that they can already do, and then that can take them to that can help them to kickstart the journey. I share that with them, and you can share that with people that are listening, and that's what yeah, it's, I guess, spreading what you do, for example, is a good avenue. So giving us platform to engage and talk to some other new people, and looking at different set of and we love looking at technology that have already matured in the renewable energy, but also new technology. And I know one thing you're particularly keen on is carbon capture. So I think, like I said, for us, nothing is off the table. Let's have a sensible discussion and let's see what works or what doesn't work. And it's also possible that what works today may not be working tomorrow. Like I said, we shouldn't take that as like I said, as an ideology whereby we can't have discussion whatsoever, because no, I think we need to be open access, open table. I'll say.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those resources. We'll definitely make sure to share them with the listeners, and we'll put links as well in the description for everybody to have a look at and follow. I was going to also ask, is there anything else that you want to mention, anything that you want to highlight, or something for people to think about?
You mean in general?
In general, yeah, it could be either related to renewables in energy, renewables in Africa, or it could be related to something else you're working on that you want to promote. Is there anything that generally you want to?
Yeah, I would say for renewables in Africa, so we do at our level, we do what we can to expand the message, to open it up to so many people. Because, like I say, for example, before I joined this call, I was obviously moderating a session, which was a great session. But what I was saying to people over there is, as great as it was, I was speaking to converted people that are already in the sector, right? And then obviously there was less than 100 of us at that webinar. That's great. But I say, but Africa is 1.3 billion these days. How do we take the message to the to the 100 that we are, to the rest of the people? This is where, for me, where the real challenge is. And the way I look at things, for me, and I started to really realize it. So it's always think about in terms of scale, because the sort of challenge that the continent of Africa is facing, this so gigantic problem that we definitely need to integrate in whatever we do in scale. How do we scale it up? For example, I would say an initiative that I launched, right? It's a virtual masterclass that are training people to become a solar entrepreneur. And the rationale behind it was simply that: how do I make sure that I have 10,000 just like me that are in African continent, right? Because I say if I'm looking at electrifying the continent by 2040, I clearly know that I can't be doing that on my own. So how can I contribute and give some of my knowledge to other people, right? So that they're able to start the journey and replicate that. Yeah. That's a kind of obviously I'm not saying that it's the only one or it's the best one. Not clearly not. But I'm saying as well,
No, of
putting
course,
that
but yeah.
into your mind. So how do you scale up things so that you can replicate things much faster and achieve that? And I'm always very, very happy to see that more and more people want to join the sector. So as far as I'm concerned, different people I've worked with, like the big names out there now. So I won't mention them because I'm not going to give them free publicity. They need to come and talk to you. But
Sure.
but I talked. I've been fortunate. I'm fortunate now to work with some of the very reputable companies out there now. But I'm always very keen to see what can we do to bring in more people, more talent, and develop more technology and just support entrepreneur. Obviously, I'm loving it right now. I'm loving it right now. But this is what happened, and also I need to pay tribute as well to my wife because she was more entrepreneurial than I was, and she's the one who kind of initiated me in this into this journey. So it means that you also need to have a good partner or a good environment around you.
Wow. Behind every great man is an even greater woman, right? The quote goes. Or behind every great man is a greater partner, let's say.
Yeah, but let me become a great man first. Yeah.
I love it. You're too humble, Tony. No, thank you so much. I would love for us to carry on and keep this conversation going for hours, but I know that you need to go, so we'll let you go. But thanks again for coming on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure talking together, and we'll be sure to share the information you share with us with our listeners, and hopefully we can maybe have you back on at some point in the future again, and we will have progressed. You will have progressed as well, even more, and then we can sort of pick up from where we left off.
Well, no problem at all. Very happy to come back later. So when it's suitable, I also want to thank you for giving us the opportunity. Like I say, we don't take it for granted. Being able to reach out to more people, diverse people that don't necessarily will not always listen to me because like they're not just part of my network, of my circle. I just love it. And like I say, whatever I said that speak to you, take action. Because like I say, knowledge knowledge is power. For me, this is only partially true. Because there's a lot of shared knowledge. It's the execution that is key. Applying knowledge for me is the real power. So whatever you can do to get things moving forward, that's where the answer is. Because you're all part of that silver bullet that we talked about, which is the population.
Absolutely. It's definitely very inspiring. So no, thank you so much for that, Tony. Have a brilliant rest of the day. Have best of luck with Renewables in Africa as well. Carry on the good work, and I'm very much looking forward to visiting Africa in the future and in 2040 and everything being fully electrified.
Excellent, Mo. I appreciate that. Thank you for the platform.
We hope that you liked the episode. This podcast was sponsored by QFinds, a hiring platform that matches candidates with employers based on many factors to ensure longer-term alignment. It goes way beyond package and salary and connects people together based on many, many things that ensure everybody's working in a place where they feel like they belong. To find out more, go to the qfinds.io website and find out more about the release of this podcast as well as my other podcast. You can go to the @qfinds.io on Instagram. You can also follow me on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Links to anything mentioned in the episode that we said we'd link to will be in the description below, as well as links to the aforementioned tags and websites. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we cannot wait to release more episodes. Please feel free to share far and wide, and stay tuned for more.